All right. Good morning, Doug. I think the biggest thing in the news is that Obama is a traitor. I mean, we know this officially now because although a lot of this information had been uncovered, in the years past about Russiagate and all of that, the connections were not as clear as they were based upon Tulsi's release of information and what she's told Trump. So much so that Trump felt quite confident yesterday, in an open forum in a press conference, just outright calling him a traitor and say, I'd like to say, let's give it time and just see, but we know he was a traitor.
Well, I can't wait to find out. I mean, I never thought of him in such an overt role. I'd only credited the fact that he was a homosexual rent-a-boy in Chicago's bathhouses, but that was pretty well swept under the rug.
Yeah.
But
I was
traitor,
always fixated on the citizen or the birth certificate thing personally, but bathhouses, birth certificate, Columbia University, no one knew him when he went there. There's a lot of weird things in his past.
well, that's true. A lot of indications that he's the genuine Manchurian candidate. Just
Yeah.
from come out of nowhere. But anybody can be elected president or installed as president, as is shown by the fact that we almost had Kamala Harris, a total nothing nobody who can't even string together words in a sentence, and she was going to be the president. Came within an RKH of being a president, being the president actually.
And we
So
had Biden who was unfit, I mean, incapable mentally.
yes, and they almost ran him instead of Kamala, who was the. No, this is all crazy. Well, I guess the question is, are they going to be able to prove that Obama was conducting, in effect, a coup in the US? And I'm not surprised because coups happen of different types, happen all the time in all kinds of countries around the world. So why not the US? Since although the US used to be unique in that it was formed to defend the average citizen against the government. That's what the Bill of Rights is all about, which is pretty unique, actually. Uh, but that's all a dead letter at this point. So the question is Trump going to pursue this thing right to the end? And can they
Yeah.
mount evidence and can they find a venue to try Obama? And even if they find that he's criminally liable of treason, uh, will they prosecute him right to the end? Because this would be a major, major scandal. I mean, this is
Yeah, and it's
like,
weird to make these declarations without you'd assume that there would be cases. If you know what I mean, like the declaration wouldn't be made and before there are actually cases filed. I would assume. You know what I mean? Like,
I agree. And Tulsi Gabbard impresses me as a very level-headed person who wouldn't just fly off the handle. Now, of course, she's a hardcore leftist that believes in all kinds of standard leftist things, but they don't have a lot to do with her current position running the so-called intelligence community. It's funny they call it a community. That sounds so benign and beneficial, even a community. Everybody likes communities, even if our intelligence community is, hardcore killers and sociopaths and so forth. But God, I can't wait to see how this
yeah, I
works
mean,
out.
it certainly, well, it serves as a good distraction from the Epstein mess, that's for sure. But you got to wonder. I mean, do they take this approach and really be aggressive? And because they can obviously there's a conspiracy there, which means all kinds of people could be swept up by this easily, and arrests could be made. I mean, there was a one of the things, the most aggressive charge they used against the J6 people was a conspiracy to um, overthrow the government or something like that. Like it was some major thing like that, and they went after them super hard, morning raids, and got them. And I think if they really believe this, they could go after, Comey and Clapper and Gina Haskell and a whole bunch of people right away without even having to touch the president.
Of course, J6 was just little people. That was just the peasants. So you can round them up. But it's hunting big game when you go after these major league criminals. And goodness, I hope they don't go after Hillary too hard and heavy. Otherwise, I mean, God forbid that Tulsi commits suicide or something.
We
As
don't want to lose
unfortunate
another good
accident.
one.
Right, exactly. She could be added to a list of how many are 45 or 50 people are possible Arkancides, as they say.
Yeah. So what's your best guess on whether or not will this be something that serves as political theater that motivates the base for the next couple of years, appointing a special counsel, for instance, to investigate it, or will this actually turn into something real?
I think it's a coin flip. I think it's actually possible that this is going to happen. I mean, look at Watergate. Watergate was a big nothing. It was just a, a break-in for political reasons. I mean,
One could say that was a coup.
you could say that. That's true. And in the coup, it wasn't the coup itself that was the problem. It was the cover-up of the coup that
Well,
was,
what I mean is I think that a lot of people used it against him and told him like all the Republicans and the Senate told him you don't have the votes, you got to get out of here, and he just walked away. And
yeah. Well, there is a difference between what's going on now and what happened in the Nixon days, as far as I'm concerned. It's that in those days, nobody liked Nixon. I mean, I certainly don't. He was a creepy guy. But the thing is that the Democrats are really out and out communists at this point. I mean, that sounds so inflammatory to say that, but when it comes to their philosophical beliefs, yes, they're all Marxist, ultra hardcore leftists and so forth. And we're on the ragged edge, I still think, of a civil war in the US because these people hate each other. It's not just a bunch of leftist students like was the case in the 60s. This is widely inseminated throughout US society. Yeah, we could have a civil war. And if you do something like this, prosecute these horrible people, it's hard to say. These things take on a life of their own.
yeah, yeah, and you got to wonder, I mean, and if you're going to go after them, if you really wanted to target these people, if they really were people you were going to go after, you really would think you would spend the energy going and arresting them, collecting evidence, filing charges, not in the public domain just talking shit about them.
Yeah.
That's my concern.
Well, we're not within the walls of power, and we don't know what is on Trump's mind and what he might be, how he might be colluding with various people, or how his enemies are colluding against him. But it's an unstable situation. It amazes me that the stock market, and for that matter, the bond market, are so close to all-time highs.
Things are good. It's the golden age, Doug. I don't know if you forgot.
No, I pretty much have forgotten. But I would not be surprised, actually, as overpriced as the stock market is, and the fact that with all the money that's been printed, at some point, it's going to work its way through the python, and we could have really radical retail price rises. So you add a stock market crash to high inflation, to corporations laying off more people. No, I think we're in for rough running here for the next couple of years. I hope I'm wrong because I prefer good times to bad times. God forbid we live in an active war zone, especially an
Well,
active zone.
well, and I think, this Obama stuff adds this another wrinkle to the overall objective, which I really believe that Trump is attempting to pursue, as we've talked about months ago, is a global trade and monetary reset. Like I really believe that that effort is underway. And that is going to be chaotic no matter what. And he has limited time to do it, right?
And when we were talking before, you mentioned who was it that came up with the ultra super cockamamie idea of expiring currencies? Who's floating that?
It just was in the Australia, which press was it? It was let me find it again. It was in Sky News Australia. It says the Reserve Bank is quietly helping to build a world in which money could expire or be geographically restricted by jumping feet first into the world of programmable money.
Good grief. Expiring money, which would almost force you to spend it. The way they see it is stimulate the economy by spending. But this will destroy private capital, destroy savings. It's actually if if digital currencies are bad, and they're very, very bad, this is the ultimate expression of it. Expiring digital currencies.
Right.
It's actually a criminally insane idea, and it sounds like if the Australian Central Bank is playing with it, that there are people that take it seriously.
And I am sure all these things become possible with the Genius Act, which was passed at least by the Senate, uh, which basically creates a structure for these stable coins. And these stable coins all have the possibility to do this. I think it's on its way, and no matter what. But Australia is a special case. It's like they're like maybe because they're isolated and docile and unarmed. I don't know, but they seem to be the test case. They got it really bad during COVID, and then I have an Australian friend who didn't see his wife and child for over a year because of the COVID restrictions, because they were trapped in Australia and just because of their situation, they couldn't leave and he couldn't enter. So it was super crazy. And they also passed a law recently that says if you leave the country, you have to pay taxes as if you lived in Australia for 3 years. But you know that 3 year limit will increase.
Oh, they're following in the footsteps of the United States from that point of view, aren't they?
They are. And then right after they did that, so right after they did that, they passed a law around taxing unrealized gains.
Hmm. Well, of course, the Kiwis, and this was actually the main reason why I didn't become a Kiwi citizen when I was living there for all those years, is I didn't set myself up properly with offshore trusts and this type of thing. That in New Zealand, that's already in effect for offshore assets that you're
Mm,
taxed at the end of the year, regardless of. So the whole world, frankly, is going in the wrong direction as far as, except for Argentina, where Milei is trying to go in the right direction. But of course, the bad guys are throwing as many roadblocks at him as they possibly can.
exactly. But in the world that we're in, to just for the sake of it, let's just use Klaus's representative of the term, the Great Reset of the economic system, where every nation is overloaded with debt and obligations, and that something must change, something big must change, and it's a fourth turning time, and we just call it Great Reset for the sake of it. And we have these stable coins being part of it. We see that coming in. We see all the other economic stuff that Trump is doing. Part of it is a grab for money by the state. And, whether that's, you could look at these two aspects, these two laws that I mentioned for Australia as capital controls, right?
Yep.
So we're going to see more and more capital controls. We saw that recently, they want to be able to sell private equity, make private equity stuff available in 401ks, to like basically allow the billionaires to dump their shitty assets on the public. You know, they made it changing the banking rules so the banks can buy more treasuries. I mean,
Oh,
it's like
yeah.
it's a so we have within the scope of all this stuff of, whether or not now they may actually legitimately go after a head of state as a traitor in the US, and not to say he doesn't deserve it, but they may actually go after him. Within the background of all of it, the most important part is what's happening on the economic front, I think, and that is this global system reset.
Yeah, all the more reason why you need to activate a plan B. In other words, get yourself a second residence in a country that you like other than your home country, preferably a second citizenship, and
Foreign
because
accounts,
anything can happen anywhere. And getting back to what will Trump do about this treason thing with Obama, I think Trump believes, with very good reason, that unless he really cleans house of these people, which may be impossible to do actually for a number of reasons, that once he's out of office, they're going to come back after him with a vengeance.
especially now, and now that he's named names now of people, and so like the more rhetoric against them, I think the greater his risks become. Like he could try and become friends with them, behind the scenes and like, smooth things over, but not to say they would allow it,
No,
but when you're coming out publicly and you're calling people traitors, especially, the first black president, I
it's
think
hard to walk that back. It
it's
really
hard to walk that back. Yeah. So, and
is.
then, the Gerald, I don't know why I'm not remembering his name, Trends Journal guy. Um,
Gerald
Yeah,
Celente.
Jared Salenti, he says, if nothing else, they take you to war. When things go bad, they take you to war. And so we see the war stuff looking like it's only going in one direction, which is up. Like they delivered U.S. nuclear weapons to the UK for the first time in 15 years. Why would they do that?
Why? Yes, why? That's crazy, actually. It actually is
I,
crazy.
I think so too.
Oh,
And you mentioned something to me about bunkers in Germany being rebuilt.
yes, there was an article in the Wall Street Journal yesterday or the day before about how the German government has a plan to renovate all the bunkers that were built during the nuclear war scares of the 1980s and the 1960s, for that matter. They're renovating those. And why are they doing that? Because they're looking at a war. And that ties in, incidentally, with one of the more insane things that Trump is proposing and pushing the European nations to do is increase their military spending up to around 5% of GDP, which in the case of most of these countries is doubling military spending. Well, that might be good for Lockheed and General Dynamics and all the rest of these Praetorian companies. But who's the war going to be against with the Europeans? It must be Russia because Trump is still providing weapons for the Ukrainians so they can kill each other. I mean,
And he gave Russia a 50-day deadline.
uh, well, of course, he's so full of bluster that let's hope he backs down from that. But things can get out of control when you have all this stupidity going on. I mean, somebody could go psychotic, just like the pilot of an airliner can go psychotic. This can happen with people that are pretty close to the red button in Washington
Right,
or Moscow or Tel Aviv or Brussels or London
right. Or just a mistake, you know?
or just a mistake. It doesn't have
And
to be a psychotic break. That's right.
it's crazy. I mean, these people are playing with fire, and it's
Yeah.
really unbelievable. And all those things that are going on. Did you watch the Tucker interview with a German reporter from Bild? Did you see that by chance?
No, the last Tucker thing I listened to was he was talking to, oh Jesus. I listen to these things late at night to go to sleep. Probably not a good thing to do. It gives me night. But, no, tell me about the build.
Okay, I'm going to send it to you. You have to watch it because he is so insulting of the German people and how they basically how they've been broken, that they're an occupied country, which they are,
Yeah.
and they have no self-respect. and that their ally blew up their most, the largest industrial act of terrorism ever, and they don't want to talk about it, and that they really believe that that the Russians are their number one threat, and yet they don't. They see all these migrants around and don't look at their own leaders. I mean, he was relentless about it, and it was so. And the guy, and he was joking. He's like, "You guys like this abuse I'm giving you, It's like you're such you're broken people now that like I'm just." Uh, anyway, I'll send it to you. It's hilarious and
Oh,
so accurate.
I'd like to see that. You'll have to post that also if
I
it's
will.
good. And the other thing, in addition to the fact that they're supposed to double their military spending, is that all Germans are programmed to be Marxists and leftists and welfare stateites. Uh, and it's even worse than that because there is a reaction to all this going on in Germany. It's the AfD party, Alternative for Deutschland. And the other parties, almost all of the other parties, are making moves to outlaw the AfD party, to outlaw anybody that's not an overt socialist. And whether they can pull it off or not, I don't know. But the people that are running the German government they're just criminals. So no, Germany is, in fact, all of Europe is fucked. It really is.
Yeah, and I mean, and honestly, Germany was Europe. I mean, France too, I guess, in terms of powerhouses, they were but Germany itself especially was the powerhouse there, and they've just destroyed themselves or allowed themselves to be destroyed by the blowing up of the pipeline. I mean, it just completely destroys their industry and
Of course.
importing all these migrants. I mean, all these terrible things they've done, which of course we're doing a lot of that in the U.S. too. Were so anyway, he does address that point that you just mentioned in that interview as well. So you'll love it. You'll find it very entertaining because Tucker's on fire just because this is a build. He's a major build reporter. He's a guy who will interview heads of state,
Mm.
and he's at Tucker's place, and Tucker just he's like trying to convince him, that like trying to change his mind, and he doesn't change his mind at all. But he's doing his best, and it's hilarious actually how insulting he is at them. You'll enjoy it. So I'll send you that.
Oh,
Uh,
good.
the other thing, let's see, that I think is worth mentioning is we talked a little bit before. I was going through and reading. I gave up on the effort trying because nobody cares about the Build Back Better. I'm sorry, the what does he call the bill?
Big bad bill.
Yeah, big beautiful bill. Right. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Uh, but one thing that I noted in there that stood out to me was the ICE budget, and which that it was up 800%. And I said a lot of Americans would cheer, or a lot of MAGA people would cheer that as a positive thing. But there's this article in Newsweek about that. And I'll share my screen real quick so people can just see it. It's because it is interesting. These aren't people obviously friendly to Trump, Newsweek, and it's mainstream press and, blah, blah, blah. I know that they're terrible people. I totally agree. But what they do in here is they highlight some of the features of this increase. And one of the things that's particularly interesting about it is that ICE now has a budget that is higher than the military expenditure of all but 15 countries.
Hmm.
Now that seems a little over the top.
Yeah, so are the ICE guys going to be running around in uniforms or are they going to be plain clothes so that they're more surreptitious? We don't know what they're
We
going to
don't
do with
know.
all this extra money, do we?
No, we know. So we know parts of it. We do know, for instance, that they're going to spend $45 billion to build jails for single adults and females.
Hmm. Wow, 45 billion. I'd like to do some math. Uh, Divide that by 1,000 and you get 45. How many like $100,000 jail cells or apartments would that buy? I mean, that's a lot.
Yeah, you would think so. I mean, I'm like, what number? Like, I thought we were going to deport the people, not just keep them locked up, right? So, what's the point of the
Well, maybe,
jails?
maybe the problem is that if they're going to deport, I mean, I'm fine with their deporting criminals and ne'er-do-wells and parasites and the worst kind of people, which the U.S. tends to draw now because we offer such massive benefits and scams for these people. It's funny. There's another group that I'm a member of, and one of the guys, they're all a bunch of rich guys, and he's talking about in the Hamptons, and he has a relationship. He's friendly with his gardener and his housekeeper and the usual entourage. And he talks to them because he's interested in these things. And he says that they tell him that yes, among the migrant community, there's a it's well known exactly which benefits you can get and how you get them and how you fill out the forms and how you don't get caught. And so they're picking up all these great freebies, subsidized. I mean, it's incredible. But they know all these things. That's why they came to the country. Plus, in a place like the Hamptons, or for that matter, Aspen, I'll bet it's higher in Aspen now. You pay $30 an hour cash, tax free to these people. So it's really an incredible scam. So,
Let's say if you're gonna, it's if you're gonna house, um, let's say 1 million people, then that is $45,000
per
per
person,
house. Yeah.
wow, yeah, that's just amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, that's a lot. That is a lot of money on jails.
And we already have more jails per capita by far than any other country in the world, including Russia and China or anybody, by far
Right.
more jails per capita.
And my guess is it doesn't cost $45,000 for a jail cell. My guess is if you're building a big, if you're building, I mean, they're doing this alligator alley stuff, right? I mean, that swamp one, how much could that cost per holding cell they put there?
Well, in the cages that they erected at Guantanamo, and of course, now we're talking 25 years ago, 20, 25 years or more, 30 years ago, when they built all these cages in Guantanamo. Even back then, they were 50,000 bucks a cage, which is like $100,000. How can you spend that much money for basically a cage? But
Hmm.
money went
Well,
somewhere.
and those theoretically, at least theoretically, were terrorists, and so I can imagine, like there's a certain number of real bad actors that, came through in the invasion under Biden, no doubt. And if you wanted to imprison those guys, you know, I guess I can understand that, but
Well, I would understand it a little bit more if they'd actually given them trials. I mean, before you put somebody in a cage for many years, there ought to be a trial, but there was never a trial for any of these people.
right, and why don't we? But with these invaders, I just feel like we're deporting them. So I don't understand why we would need a holding facility for 100,000 or 1 million, whatever that number is. I just don't know why we would need that. Unless you're looking toward the future and you imagine a future of great disruption where there might be dissidents of all varieties, not necessarily just illegal immigrants, and you might want to use the 16th largest military in the world against it.
That's right. You want to round up the usual suspects and suspected enemies of the state. Well,
That's what concerns me.
I've said for many years, I'd much rather watch this out on my my widescreen down here than out my front window in the US. It's got to get serious. It's got to
Yeah,
get serious as the bond market blows up and interest rates go much higher and the stock market collapses and goes much lower because it's at all-time highs and by all conventional terms. Well, God, I can't wait to see well, I can wait to see what happens, and I hope I'm dead wrong about this.
It's getting it's all coalescing though in this very limited window of time I think that's available because basically, Trump wants to make something happen. Trump's got 3 years to make it happen.
Well,
And
I read in WAPO today, Washington's fag hag rag, which has improved greatly since Bezos basically fired most of the ultra leftist staff, and they just have ordinary leftists now. Uh, but they had an article about how Rahm Emanuel is planning, it seems, to run for president in 2028.
this was the chief of staff under Obama, right?
Yes, exactly. And he's very slick and very smart. And interestingly, although of course he was born in the US, he's also an Israeli citizen. Gee, I think that'd be great to have the president of the US be a citizen of Israel, not just a supporter of Israel.
And his brother is one of the biggest like Hollywood kind of agents and is the owner of the UFC.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I
Oh,
mean, it was his brother who basically waged the personal jihad against Kanye for the things he noticed.
well, and of course, Trump is a fan of the UFC. I I like watching cage fighting too, of course, but Trump really likes watching it because, well, what was it? Are they going to have a cage fight on on
Yes,
White House lawn sometime? When is that?
that's it's at the I guess it would be July 4th of next year, which is the 250th anniversary. Yeah, so
That's
yeah.
that's really funny. Well, we can't have gladiatorial combats, but cage fighting is as close as you can get.
Yeah, maybe if things deteriorate enough, we can get back to the old days where we can have real gladiators out there, though. Maybe we'll live long enough to see that.
Yeah,
Have
uh,
migrants fight for their freedom.
right. Yeah.
I don't know. It's gonna get wild though, Doug, because I think the biggest thing people have to realize there's all this chaos happening. You have this drive to increase the wars, not to decrease them. I mean, the money's being spent. Society's attitudes are being shaped. This Tucker interview with the Build guy, he said, I get the impression, this is what Tucker said, I get the impression that the German people see, Vladimir Putin as a much greater threat to Germany than they do anything else, like their own leadership or the problems that they have socially, et cetera, et cetera. And he said, yes, that's true.
We've been totally programmed, totally and absolutely programmed. It's insane. But there's even more that's changing and is interesting. And that is that for hundreds of years, it's kind of been accepted among nation states that wars are things that are fought by the peasants in fields, but the king or the president or the top people are insulated. You don't think of killing them. Well, of course, the Israelis have done that on a massive scale, both with Hamas and Hezbollah, and now Iran, an actual nation state. And the US is famous for sending out assassins in the form of drones. We don't call them assassinations, we call them, what do we, selected
High
killing,
high value targets.
high value targets. That's right. They're not assassinated, they're just high value targets. And this is a new thing because even during World War II, it is said, uh, this is hard to verify, that Hitler's staff suggested that they assassinate Stalin and his top henchmen, and that would perhaps overthrow the Soviet Union. Good idea. But Hitler said that would just be improper. That's that's what they say. Hitler said and quashed that. But the U.S. and Israel now are doing things that even Hitler thought was a bad idea. I think it's a good idea, frankly, because like anything, these things can get out of control. But the point is that the miscreants that run governments should be afraid for their own lives and not feel that they're insulated from the
Yeah.
bad things that they do.
That's true, but I think my worry is that the success, especially that Israel has experienced with this, not including, of course, Iran, which didn't work as they had hoped, but that success of it, I think, um, has identified that as a strategy where they could take on almost anybody. And I think that if they feel like they could just do it right, that they could actually take down Russia this way. They will never win in a conventional war on the battlefield. They don't want it to go to nuclear, but what might they do, using this strategy to, if they think they can get away with it, if they think that they might be able to pull off some super effective, highly coordinated, Palantir planned AI, generated attack on multiple key places at the right time. I mean, I don't think they'd be successful, but it's certainly, if you try it, you got to imagine that, you're playing with fire.
Yeah, I'd be willing to make a bet that there's a good chance that Israel isn't going to survive another decade as a nation state. I mean, it's true that they've taken out all of their enemies or supposed enemies from, well, all these color revolutions, but Syria, Iraq, Iran, Egypt, which is being bribed to be their BFF by the US, in addition to the fact that we send Israel $4 billion a year. I don't know when that started, at about the time of the USS Liberty incident or not, but I question whether Israel is going to last long because there's just too much antipathy towards them at this point, what they're doing.
Well, and the internal disruption could be bad. I saw, just reminded me, I saw an article yesterday, or no, it was several days ago, where the IDF was calling up 54,000 Orthodox Jewish students for conscription in the IDF. Now, the
Hmm.
Supreme Court passed a law last year that said that they were no longer exempt from participating in these conscription drives, but this is the first time that there's been an effort by the government to actually do it. And 54,000 as a percentage of the population is a pretty, like if you applied that number to the U.S., it'd be like the equivalent of over a million, calling up a million of this once, group that could not be touched to participate. So, like the internal strife that could be caused from that alone could take it down.
Yeah, yeah. It's fun to watch. Well, not so.
It's not so fun to watch. So, but the main game at the center of all this is the monetary and the fiscal matters that I think are trying to be addressed, which is part of this great reset. And I think that's the main show. I got to keep your eye on the ball, right?
Well, there's nothing we can do about it except be aware of it and insulate ourselves from it to the greatest degree possible. And part of that is financially. And I'm pleased to say that finally, all these crappy little mining stocks are starting to move up. And I'm just hoping, it's quite possible, that it'll be like it was in the 70s and part of the 80s when, as a group, all these stocks went 10 to 1, with many going 100 to 1, and actually a couple of thousand to 1 shots, one of which I owned, actually,
Yeah,
maybe
and
two
as
of
a part of that, I mean, when you think about it, the 70s, basically during that period, the dollar lost between what, 75 and 90% of its value, right? And I think that we're in that period again where that has to happen. The dollar must be depreciated as part, I mean, it's been a stated objective of the administration. And so, that factor as a driving force behind these stock moves would make sense.
yeah. And in the meantime, the rich are getting richer, and the poor and the middle class, and even the bottom of the upper middle class are being squeezed. What a witch's brew.
Yeah, no kidding. One last thing, say is that just the grifting that's happening, and not just the grifting, but the kind of the outright corruption that's occurring is pretty shocking. Of course, we have the Trump coin, announced right before giant
Oh, yeah.
grift.
Oh,
But
that was a good scam. What's it trading at now? Do we know?
I don't know, but they bought $3 billion worth of. I know Trump, the Truth Social holding company, is owns now $3 billion of Bitcoin.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Wow.
and but like there was this the floated this idea of a tariff on copper.
Yeah.
Right before that, someone front ran that trade by a mere minute, or well, maybe it was by 3 minutes. Front run it and made a shitload of money. So like there's so much of that shit going on. It's actually incredible, and people are just
It is so profitable to be well connected with high government officials. It really is. Because the
yeah, but
government is
it's
where the action's at.
I know, but it's clearly illegal unless you're a congressperson, and but people are doing it, and I don't, and it's like nobody cares. So anyway, all right. Well, I think we'll leave it there for today, Doug, and we'll be back on Friday with questions from members of the file. If you got a question for Doug, or if you liked this video, comment. If you agreed with it, if you agreed with what we said, then tell us. And if you think that we're idiots and wrong, go ahead and tell us that too. Add a explanation that helps. But I generally read at least all the comments.
Yeah, that's right. Explanations help. It's not, you guys are idiots. That
Yeah,
doesn't, I'd like to know exactly why. I mean, that's helpful.
yeah. If we're idiots, we'd like to become less idiotic. So like, if you can give us some help and instruction, that would we'll give it a read. So
Okay.
anyway, we'll leave it there. Talk to you on Friday, Doug. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Matt.